Well, as I frequently do after I make some of my videos of my memories, I remember one thing. So I'm gonna make some additions to the tour time spent in Okinawa from '73 to '75 because there's a couple of things that I realized that were pretty significant, at least to me anyway, that happened during that time. So one involves a dog, cat, a friend of mine from back home, and a guitar, and some friends, Air Force guys that became friends, and some golf. First of all, let's talk about the dog. Okay, so let's go back to uh, I said we had this tiny little apartment, and we did. And in the back of this apartment was this kind of alleyway. I don't remember 100% of how this came about, but somehow while I was at work, it seemed like while I was working, Linda found this little puppy who had been tossed out, thrown away, or whatever, lost. It couldn't have been more than like 8 or 9 weeks old. It was really, really a tiny little thing, but it was in pretty bad shape. It wasn't like a normal puppy that was 7, 8, 9 weeks old. It was like you put some food in front of it and it would try to eat anything you would give it. No, it didn't. She found it. She had brought it back to the apartment, and uh, it it wasn't doing very well at all. I think remember trying to give it food. It wouldn't eat any food. Just this tiny little thing, and it was gonna. If something didn't happen pretty quick, that it was just it was going to die because it wasn't taking anything to eat or drink. So I, having acquired this skill, as I mentioned in the video to begin with, I was working in this NICU, this newborn intensive care unit. One of the things that you had to learn to do was to feed these premature babies, and premature babies, they don't usually normally they don't come out. Um, they're not. They don't want to eat. They don't want to take anything. They don't want to drink. So like a normal baby, 9 months comes out. They're ready for you put a bottle or nipple, or their mom's breast in front of them, and they're ready. They're ready to eat. But prematures, no. So you had to do something to make sure that they had some food intake until they started uh, uh, getting an appetite and wanting to eat. So I learned how to put a tube down into these tiny little babies' nose and then down into their stomach, and then you had to the way to make sure that it was in the stomach and you didn't go into the lungs. So I developed that little skill, and you need a syringe and well, I had all the things I needed, and so that's what I remember somehow. I wonder if I could do this with this little puppy, I wonder if I could do the same thing I was doing with these little. So I guess when I went to work, I grabbed up these little tiny little feeding tubes, and syringes and some formula. Took them home and figured out, I guess, pretty quickly that I could do the same thing with these feeding tubes and a syringe and formula, and it worked. uh, I think pretty quickly, after getting this formula in the stomach, and a couple of the little puppies started to respond pretty fast. And before we know it, boom, he's up. He's started taking in some solid or soft fruits, and there we go. That little dog's name was Sarge. Now we also, while we were there, and this was before we got into housing, we were still in this little apartment. We also would later on. I don't know where the cat came from either, but we had a Siamese cat while we were there. So we had a dog and a cat. I don't remember the name of the cat. I remember the name of the dog, Sarge. Ooh, how original that was. And Sarge would be with us throughout the time that we were there. Um, Now, there's a downside to that, and uh, you know, I guess I've always liked animals, but as time would go on throughout my life, my feeling towards animals and about animals would change a lot. I mean, uh, I really like dogs. I like like animals in general, dogs and cats, but dogs more than anything. And so the rest of the story about Sarge, if you want to put it that way, is that eventually we had to leave Okinawa. And the heartbreaking part is we had to leave Sarge there. We took him to the animal facility, uh, and so in that moment, at that time, you know, I think of that today. I said, well, how terrible that was. We had this sick dog. He's only been a couple of years old, and we had to leave him there. Well, and I feel bad about it, but honestly, so you say, well, why didn't you bring that dog with you? Well, when you think a little harder, when I think a little harder, uh, we couldn't. I didn't have the money to bring that dog back. Would have cost for us, a small fortune, and you'd have to put him through quarantine and all that stuff. So, but I'm sure it was all monetary, and so there's feeling again, my own selfishness, again, for lack of a better term. I just, when we left there, I was in a hurry. I hadn't been back to Indiana and seen my, Linda was with me, but we hadn't seen anybody back home with you. So I'm just, I just want to get gone from here, from this place where they obviously didn't like American soldiers anyway, for good or bad reasons. There wasn't much affection towards us. So, um, and so, to be honest, I um, it was not. It was just financial and my own just wanting to get back to the States without any problems or hitches or trouble. So Sarge got left behind there. Now I don't know what happened to Sarge. You'd like to think, well, maybe somebody adopted him, and maybe they did. Maybe he had a good life after that. But maybe, but I don't know. You put uh, um, dogs into animal facilities or shelters or pounds, and you don't know if they got adopted or not. I have no way of knowing. But I know for us financially that would have cost, even if it was like $700, $800, $900,000, we didn't have that money. We could not have done that without going to getting some type of loan. And my feelings about dogs and him, are, I like Sarge, and I love, it's just different today. There's no way I could do that today. There's just no way. There's no way in hell I would do that today, but it happened. And the same with the cat. I just don't think I had the feelings I had for the cat, and that's wrong too. But so, or maybe we got somebody I have a feeling that somebody took the cat. I mean, not took it, but somebody agreed to adopt the cat. So that's, but in thinking about it some more, I realized that Sarge, even if that was the end of his life there, even if he didn't and they put him to sleep there, even if that's so, he wouldn't have, and maybe I'm just saying this to make myself feel, he wouldn't have been alive if I didn't do what I did, knowing how to take care of these premature babies, paid off for him, and that I could save his life. So if not for that, he would have died. The puppy would have died, and so he wouldn't have had any life at all. So I guess to make it myself feel a little bit better, I can always, it's just like, yeah, right. I mean, we gave him life, but in the end, did we take his life? I don't know. I don't know. Not, we didn't give him life, but I made it possible for him to live. But without that knowledge that I gained from taking care of those premature babies, that wouldn't happen. Okay, let's go on from there. Obviously, that's a memory that I can't get out of my mind, but and my like I said, my thoughts about animals have changed since then. You know, if that was in the military today and I was overseas and they said it's going to cost you $5,000 to get that dog back home, and I'd say, okay, so what's next? And we'd have gone on from there because there's no way, you know. It's just a different feeling, a totally different feeling, and a much stronger feeling about animals, especially my animals, my dogs, than there was then. Okay, so let's get over it. Okay. One other little thing about while we were staying in that apartment, a funny little thing was they had these little lizards that were all over the place, these little geckos, and they actually made this little sound, tuk, tuk, tuk sound, you know, when they're in the house, and they were you'd see them, and they were like, I don't know what they had on their feet, but they would stick to the walls and ceilings, and so I don't know how many, and Linda didn't particularly care for them, so I don't know how many of those little geckos I smashed while we were living there. So the geckos that were there. Um, uh, uh, um, okay, before we got, and this is where the Army friends came in. Before we got on base housing, we got there was this off base housing, and there was housing close to there. And we got this housing, we got out of that little apartment and got into some housing. I'm pretty sure I got a housing allowance or something. That's why we were able to afford it then. After Linda got there and we got a company tour, we got into a house. I don't know why I want to say this cabana housing. But the name of the housing area. But within this area of housing, by the way, on the picture at the beginning of the video that you saw, one thing when I see those pictures of any kind of housing in Okinawa, usually the roofs are all flat. There's no pitched roofs; they're all flat. And the reason is because of typhoons. That area is called Typhoon Alley. There's usually 1 or 2 or 3 typhoons that come through that area every year. So you'd go through these levels, you know, it's typhoon, it's level 1, it's level 2, it's level 3. Those all indicated how strong the typhoon or the winds were going to be. But roofs were all flat, you know, for a reason. You wanted the wind to pass over them. And it could be pretty devastating sometimes. But those housing that you see there, those were meant to make it through a typhoon. And ours did when we got it. That house there looks pretty much like a lot like the house that we lived in. Military housing. But the other housing that we lived in before we got that, we were living, I said there was an air base, there was Kadena Air Base. So we lived in this house, and our neighbors, or maybe we got that house because Linda had met this gal. Her last name was Fannin. Tim Fannin was her husband. He's an Air Force sergeant, and they lived in this area. Now maybe we got that, found that area through Linda knowing this lady, and maybe she said, "Hey, we're living in this housing area." She might have met that lady through working at the beauty shop on post. But anyway, so we're in this area, in this housing area, a small little house, but a lot better than a little, lot better than a little tiny little apartment we were in. And and Tim Fannin and his wife, I don't remember her name, but Tim Fannin was the Air Force guy. And he had a friend that lived in this house, and they were both Air Force sergeants. And they used to come by, or we would go there, have barbecues and, stuff like that. We did little things together. And they were always going golfing. They were two guys, they were into golf. And there was a beautiful golf course over there. I think that belonged to the Army. And they always wanted me to go play golf. I think they went played golf just about every weekend. Come on, Jimmy, why don't you come play? You ever play golf? I don't know. I'm from Indiana, southern Indiana, although there's a golf course back in Huntingburg. But I don't know how to play golf, I didn't know, I know, the only thing I know is just how I can't play basketball very well, but I know, the only thing I know is basketball, so, but golf, and they said, "No, you come out there with us," so they always trying to get me to come out there and play golf with them. So one time I said, okay, I'll go, let me go see what this is all about. Well, I got out there and with them one time. We just rented some clubs, and they just gave me some basic pointers and principles, tips, And what I discovered was golf courses are nice, especially a lot of times military golf courses. They're well taken care of, well maintained, and they're just kind of beautiful places to be out. If the weather's nice, which we had most of the time over there, being out walking on these golf courses, that was pretty cool. I thought so. I thought, okay, well, get a little serious about this, and they kept giving me tips and showing me how to play, and after a while, okay. So I developed this interest in playing golf, and I would go out with these guys, and I even bought a cheap set of some type of golf clubs, at the PX, and so this didn't last very long though, because Tim's wife, I remember one of the first times after I got these golf clubs and had been golfing a couple of times, one of the first times we'd gone out to play golf, I don't know if she played or she must have played golf too or something, because she was with us. And they always seemed to be out with me, Tim and his friend and me. And I don't remember Linda going out to the golf course, but go out to play golf. And and like I said, I played, been out on the course a couple of times. I've learned the basics. I know how to use a couple clubs. At least I thought I did. So we went out this one day, and Tim and his friend and Tim's wife is there, and so I don't know what we were on the first hole or whatever. So I go to tee off on the first with the driver. Tim's wife is over to the right, and it's funny, but it's not funny. I'm gonna say she's like 25, 30 yards off to the right, not real far, but far enough. So you would think she's off, and I'm gonna hit the ball and go that way, and she's off over here somewhere, and they're all standing there and to wait their turn, I guess, to tee off. Man, I hit that ball, and it just I don't know exactly what I did, but I hit it, and it just off to the right. It's like a rocket off to the right, and going where? Going straight towards his wife, and she's standing over there. Of course, she's not thinking a golf ball is going to be coming towards her. And it's just like I was just frozen. I could see that ball heading towards her, and you freeze. You want to say hey, but you can't. It's just like I knew it was going to hit her, and it hit her right in the head. She's like stunned and dazed, and I go, that's enough for me. It was embarrassing. It was, I couldn't. I just felt so bad. You get hit by a golf ball. That's pretty hard. But anyway, that was the last time I played golf. I don't know if I did right then, right away, but I put those clubs in the bag, and they went home. And either right away or before we left, I sold those golf. I never played golf again. Nope, I never played golf again. It's like that's it. Okay. Okay, that was my introduction and exit from golf. Another thing that happened while I was there, back in Huntingburg, Indiana, I grew when the last place I lived at, before I left, right down the street was a kid named Dean Guthrie. Dean was 1 year younger than me, and Dean was a little bit into music, but we were just, and so we lived close to each other there. He wasn't one of my best friends, but he was a friend of mine in school. Like I said, he was a year behind me, and when you're in school, a year can make a difference. But he was just always somebody that was around, and I didn't hang out with Dean a lot, but I knew Dean, and sometimes, being that they lived close to us, I'd be down at his house and hang out with him when we were like 10, 11, 12 years old. His dad was a character, of course. That's a whole story by itself, a real character. But so Dean and I knew each other. Dean played a little guitar, not good, but he played guitar. And I think he was in one of the little groups we had. We had him and Raymond Stillwell and me, and some somebody else. This was Mike at the time. But we would get together. Garage. It really was a garage, sort of garage bands. We'd be in somebody's garage playing music, and but anyway, so we're these friends. As a matter of fact, Dean, when would later work in the bowling center there at Huntingburg, and Dean, when I left that job, they were looking for somebody else, and I guess Dean had asked me, you know, if I could help him get a job there, and so I just basically, when I left there to go from Huntingburg to work in Bedford, I kind of Dean applied, and they said okay, I guess, and so. I kind of trained Dean to take that job that I had at the bowling center there in Huntingburg. So we knew each other. We weren't the best of friends, but we were friends. But one day I'm working at the hospital at Camp Cooey, and I get this call, and they said, "It's hey, Gentry, it's for you." And I, what? Who the heck can this be? And so I get on the phone. I said, "Yeah, hello." And it says, "Tim, it's Dean." I go, "What? Dean who?" Dean Guthrie from back home, Huntingburg. I said, so I'm like, "What are you talking about? I'm in Okinawa, Japan. What are you talking about?" He says, "I'm at the hospital there. I'm downstairs in the lobby." I go, "What?" So Dean had joined, after I left home, Dean had joined the Marines, of course. That's just Dean. Why would join him? And there's a Marine Air Corps base there. They had all these helicopters, different types of helicopters, big a Marine base. There was a lot of Marines on Okinawa. But Dean was there, and he was stationed. He was some kind of a mechanic or chief on these helicopters. I'm going, Jesus Christ, you know, this guy's responsible for something on a helicopter. You guys are in trouble. Dean, so there it is. You know, he is. He's stationed there, and somehow I don't know. Somebody told him I was working. Somebody from back home told him I was at this hospital, and so here he is. And then we meet up, and of course he comes up to the house, and revive old memories and stuff, which was not too old because I'd only been in the Army a couple of years, and it only actually been a couple of years since I've seen him. But anyway, so he's over a couple times and to the house that we had then, and soon enough he says, I need to take you up on a helicopter ride. I'll get you on a helicopter ride. Now it's like, you know, he's your friend, and you want to say yes, but at the same time you're like, Jesus Christ, you know. I already heard, you know, he'd already told me some stories about taking people up in these helicopters. These Marine pilots can be pretty stupid, do some crazy things to try to impress the people that are on board. And I didn't want any part of that. I didn't like, you know, I probably mentioned it before, I was scared of flying anyway. But you don't want to let your friend down, you know. He's like, okay, he wants to show me, you know, he's got this job and what he does, and he's some type of chief or something. Anyway, he's responsible for checking out the aircraft and make sure everything is airworthy and ready to go before it takes off. He's not the pilot, but he's like, you know, so some type of crew chief or something like that. And so he kept bugging me, and he said, you know, he'd come up with times for me, come over this date. I'd always come up with some excuse why I couldn't make it there to go. And finally one day he comes, you know, it just worked out. I didn't have an excuse. I can't get out of it. He says, okay, come on over. So I go over to the air base, get in there, and he's actually getting the aircraft ready. And I'm going, Jesus, they're gonna take me up in this helicopter, and they're gonna do some crazy stuff. So I'm like dreading this. But at the because I'm thinking, you know, if you're Dean Guthrie, you know, he's not the sharpest knife in the drawer. And if you're counting on him, if he's supposed to be, you know, telling you that this aircraft's good and ready to go, and there, you know, I don't, I wouldn't put that much confidence. He may be a friend, but I wouldn't put that much confidence in him. And so, and there had been several, and after that, there had been several Marine aircraft helicopter crashes while we were there. People, you know, you don't survive these things. And so, but right before we get ready, the time we're supposed to take off, something happened. The pilot couldn't make it, so but I got out of that one, and I successfully avoided going on an aircraft ride with Dean, his Marine Corps. The rest of the time I was there. Okay, so so we covered the dog and cat and and the friends and Dean and almost the helicopter ride. So, but I uh, I would go. This is an example, and you'll hear about it in the next video when I go to Fort Ord. You're in the military, just like there. In the first couple of duty stations I was at, I would go to work at Indianapolis in this little bitty so-called hospital, and I don't. I come out of this training where they teach you basic combat medic training. And so basic skills. You're just basically know enough to try to treat injuries and bullet wounds and fractures and stuff like that to this little hospital, which really wasn't much more than an outpatient clinic, and then to there go to Okinawa and work in this newborn intensive care, working with these little premature babies. Well, the next place I'm going to be at when I go to Fort, I didn't know it yet, but when I got my orders for Fort Ord, I'm going to. They had just Fort Ord had gone from being a basic training post. All that was gone. They were just starting the 7th Division, reactivating the 7th Division at Fort Ord. And guess where I ended up? I ended up with the infantry and the medical platoon. I'll talk about it in that video, but it just shows you that. And this happened throughout I'd be in a fixed facility, a hospital, a clinic, and then boom, I'm out in the field with the infantry and different types of jobs. And so this would be valuable to me later on in life, because you learn your skills, or as they call it, on the job training along the way. A lot of the skills, a lot of things I knew, which would pay off for me later on in life, I learned along the way. I had no choice. I had no choice but to learn these skills. The stuff I learned, from this little fixed hospital facility in Indianapolis, and then a NICU in Okinawa, and then later on to go to an infantry unit, and then well, we'll get there when we get there. But those were just some things I thought were important that I remembered after I did the video that I thought I'd add to it. But obviously this is taking 20-something minutes, so it would have been too long to take. And so I'll put this up by itself, and then eventually I'll just edit it into the first video. So, all right, we'll talk about Fort Ord and the big things that happened there later. Oh, I did it again. I did it again. I forgot the guitar. The famous guitar. Okay, what kind of guitar am I talking? While we were still there in that little bitty tiny dinky apartment, I didn't have the guitar that I had bought, my initial guitar, which I bought in Jasper. Can't remember the name of the music store in Jasper, but not that I really want to remember. But anyway, obviously I didn't take that with me to Okinawa, and so after a while being there, I, being me, wanted to play some, sing and play some music, and I didn't have a guitar, or I didn't have the money to buy a guitar, a regular, just any kind of standard, whatever the cheapest standard acoustic guitar was. I didn't have that money. No way, but. There were some things you could buy pretty cheap on the economy out there in Okinawa at that time anyway. And somewhere I found a little store that had a God, this sounds crazy. A guitar, an acoustic guitar, but it was in my kit. You had to put it together. You had to put this damn guitar together. Uh, and so, well, hell, whatever it was, I don't remember how much it was. So don't ask me that. I don't. But it must have been fairly cheap because it must have been really cheap because I had found the money to scrape together. So I had to put this thing together with glue, and it had all the pieces and stuff. I don't know how I did that. To this day, I don't remember how I did it. But I put together this little guitar out of this kit, so I'd have a guitar to play with me, and it worked somewhat. I don't remember what kind of wood it was, or didn't have any finish on it. So, but I could play on it, do my little chords on it, and it worked. I could do some, I could do some of my country songs on it anyway, and I could do a few chords on it, so it worked. So I don't know what happened to that guitar. I wish I had it back now. Now, I don't know what we did with that guitar when we left there. I have no idea. But it was a guitar out of a kit that I put together with glue and put some strings on it, and bingo bango, I had some kind of a guitar. So that was my guitar from Okinawa.